At 5 o'clock in the afternoon on July 7, 1730, a one-eyed French pirate named Olivier Levasseur stood on a wooden scaffold on the island of Bourbon, a rope already looped around his neck. He had been tortured for weeks, beaten, starved, interrogated over and over again about one thing. Where did you hide the treasure? He never said a word. But seconds before the executioner pulled the lever, Levasseur reached beneath his shirt, ripped out a crumpled piece of parchment covered in strange symbols, and hurled it into the crowd of spectators. Then he screamed 7 words that have haunted treasure hunters for nearly 3 centuries. Mes trésors à qui saura comprendre. My treasures to he who can understand. The crowd erupted. Former pirates, sailors, and locals shoved each other trying to grab the paper. And then the floor dropped, the rope snapped tight, and Olivier Levasseur was dead. That piece of paper contained a cryptogram, 17 lines of symbols that supposedly reveal the location of what many historians consider the single richest pirate haul in recorded history. A treasure estimated to be worth over $1 billion in today's money, and to this day, nobody has found it. To understand how Levasseur ended up on that scaffold, you have to go back to the port city of Calais, France in the late 1600s. Picture the northern coast of France, a city sitting right on the edge of the English Channel, close enough to England that on a clear day you could practically see the white cliffs of Dover across the water. Calais was a city built on trade, on shipping, and on the movement of goods and people between France and the rest of Europe. Olivier Levasseur was born here sometime between 1688 and 1690, right in the middle of the 9 Years' War. Europe was tearing itself apart, and France was at the center of the chaos. Now here is what makes Levasseur different from almost every other pirate you have ever heard of. He was not born poor. He was not some starving dock worker who fell into crime out of desperation. The Levasseur family was wealthy, bourgeois. They had money, connections, and they gave their son the kind of education that most people in the 1690s could only dream about. Levasseur studied architecture. He was fluent in multiple languages. Some accounts suggest he studied Greek and Latin, was well-versed in Masonic symbology, and had a deep understanding of navigation and naval engineering. This was a man who could have lived a comfortable, quiet life, designing buildings in France. But the war changed everything. When the War of the Spanish Succession broke out in 1701, King Louis XIV needed ships, not just Navy ships, but privateers, licensed pirates, essentially. The king issued letters of marque to ship captains, giving them legal permission to attack and loot enemy vessels in the name of France. Levasseur signed up. He captained a sloop called Le Postillon, and spent the next 13 years raiding English, Dutch, and Spanish ships across the Caribbean, legally, with the full blessing of the French government. And this is where the trouble started, because Levasseur discovered something about himself during those years at sea. He liked it, but not the patriotism, not the service to the crown, the hunting, the chasing. The moment a merchant ship appeared on the horizon and the crew scrambled to battle stations, the thrill of closing in on a prize, the rush of boarding a vessel and watching its captain surrender. By the time the war ended in 1714, Levasseur had spent more than a decade living this life. The French government sent word to all privateers, "The war is over, come home, return your ships." Levasseur ignored the order. He was done taking orders, done handing over percentages of his captures to bureaucrats in Paris, done pretending to be a patriot when what he really wanted was freedom and fortune on his own terms. So instead of sailing back to Calais, he sailed deeper into the Caribbean and became exactly what his letter of marque had protected him from being called: a pirate. By 1716, Levasseur had linked up with one of the most notorious pirate companies in the Caribbean, a crew led by an Englishman named Benjamin Hornigold. Now, if that name sounds familiar, it should. Hornigold's crew included a young pirate named Edward Teach. You know him better as Blackbeard. Levasseur fit right in. Despite the scar across his right eye that had started to limit his vision, he proved himself to be a ruthless and efficient leader. His crew nicknamed him L'Abuse, which means the buzzard in French. Not because he circled and waited, because when he attacked fast, violently, and without mercy, like a bird of prey diving on something it intended to kill. Others called him la bouche, the mouth, because Levasseur had a habit of verbally tearing into his victims before, during, and after robbing them. Imagine being a merchant captain watching a pirate ship pull alongside yours, and the one-eyed Frenchman on the quarterdeck is screaming insults at you in 3 different languages while his crew swings across on ropes. He was not the quiet, brooding pirate of your imagination. He was loud, confrontational, and he wanted you to know exactly who was robbing you. He also had a bizarre habit of changing his name whenever he met someone new. French sources call him Olivier. English sources call him Oliver. Some records list him as Louis Labouze. Every encounter produced a different name, which made it incredibly difficult for colonial authorities to track one man across multiple pirate incidents. For about a year, Levasseur sailed with Hornigold. He became close with Samuel Bellamy, known as Black Sam, who would go on to become one of the wealthiest pirates in history. The 2 men made an effective team. They careened their ships together on Isla de los Pinos off the coast of Cuba, raided English merchant ships along the southern coast, and prowled the Virgin Islands throughout the fall of 1716, taking anything that floated and carried cargo worth stealing. But pirate alliances were never stable for long. Hornigold had a rule. He refused to attack English ships. Being English himself, he drew the line there. This did not sit well with a crew full of men who saw a rich English merchant vessel the same way they saw any other target. Money floating on water, Bellamy and Levasseur eventually pushed Hornigold out. A vote was held, Hornigold lost command, and the company split. Levasseur partnered with Bellamy for several more months. In 1716 and early 1717, the 2 of them terrorized the Caribbean together, reportedly capturing around 50 ships during their time as partners. 50. That is not a typo. But Levasseur was restless. He wanted to strike out on his own, try his luck further south. So he and Bellamy parted ways. Bellamy headed north toward Cape Cod, where he would eventually die in a storm off the coast of Massachusetts. Levasseur headed south toward Brazil. He stole a 22-gun merchant frigate called La Louise and started raiding ships along the South American coast. Slave ships from Angola, trading vessels heading to Rio. Anything that looked like it carried something worth taking. Then disaster struck. In June of 1718, Levasseur was cruising near an island called La Blanquilla in the eastern Caribbean when he nearly ran straight into the HMS Scarborough, a British warship under Captain Francis Hume. Levasseur barely escaped, abandoning his ship and fleeing with about 60 men on a small sloop. He had lost almost everything: his ship, most of his crew, his accumulated wealth. A lesser pirate might have called it quits. Levasseur did the opposite. He sailed for the coast of West Africa and started over. He teamed up with English pirates Howell Davis and Thomas Coughlin. Together, the 3 of them attacked the slave trading port of Ouida in what is now Benin, reducing the local fortress to rubble. Then in 1720, Levasseur was shipwrecked in the Mozambique Channel and stranded on the island of Anjouan in the Comoros. This could have been the end. Instead, it was a turning point because it brought him to the Indian Ocean. And the Indian Ocean is where Olivier Levasseur would pull off the score that turned him into a legend. From 1720 onward, Levasseur operated from a base on Sainte Marie, a small island just off the northeastern coast of Madagascar. Picture it on a map. Madagascar sits in the Indian Ocean, about 250 miles off the southeastern coast of Africa. Sainte Marie is a sliver of land running along Madagascar's eastern shore. During the golden age of piracy, it was one of the most notorious pirate havens on the planet, a place where wanted men could hide, refit their ships, divide their plunder, and plan their next move without worrying about the British or French navies showing up. Levasseur had new partners now, an English pirate named John Taylor and another named Edward England. His quartermaster was Palsgrave Williams, who had previously served with his old friend Samuel Bellamy before Bellamy drowned off Cape Cod. By this point, Levasseur's bad eye had gotten worse. He was completely blind on one side and had started wearing an eye patch. A one-eyed, French-speaking, classically educated pirate leading a multinational crew of cutthroats from a jungle island off Madagascar. That was the reality of who Olivier Levasseur had become. He and Taylor raided ships throughout the Indian Ocean. They plundered the Laccadive Islands off the western coast of India and sold the stolen goods to Dutch traders for the equivalent of $75,000. Good money, but pocket change compared to what was coming. Eventually, Levasseur and Taylor got tired of Edward England. The problem? England was too humane. He kept showing mercy to captives, letting people go, refusing to execute prisoners. In piracy, that kind of softness could get you killed. So Levasseur and Taylor did what pirates did. They marooned England on the island of Mauritius and left him there with nothing. Now it was just the two of them, Labuse and Taylor. And then, in April of 1721, they spotted her, the Nossa Senhora do Cabo, Our Lady of the Cape, a Portuguese treasure ship of staggering size, 700 tons. Originally built as a Dutch man-of-war, she had been converted into a Portuguese warship and outfitted with 72 cannons. She was sailing from Goa on the western coast of India back to Lisbon, Portugal. To understand why this ship mattered, you need to understand what Goa was at the time. Goa was the crown jewel of Portugal's colonial empire in Asia, the seat of the viceroy, the center of Portuguese trade with India, China, and Southeast Asia. When a ship left Goa bound for Lisbon, it was not carrying bags of rice. It was carrying the accumulated wealth of an empire. On board the Nossa Senhora do Cabo were two of the most important people in Portugal's entire colonial system, the outgoing Viceroy of Goa and the Archbishop of Goa, also called the Patriarch of the East Indies. Both men were heading home to Portugal, and they were bringing their fortunes with them. The ship's cargo was almost incomprehensible: bars of gold, bars of silver, dozens of chests packed with golden guineas, hundreds of precious gemstones, including diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and pearls, bolts of silk, priceless works of art, and religious artifacts from the Sea Cathedral, in Goa, the largest cathedral in all of Asia at the time. But the crown jewel of the cargo was something called the Fiery Cross of Goa, a crucifix made of pure gold, encrusted with diamonds, rubies, and emeralds. It was so massive, so heavy, that it took 3 men just to lift it and carry it from one ship to another. Some modern estimates put the total value of the Nossa Senhora do Cabo's cargo at over $1 billion. Others say $138 million if you are being conservative. Either way, it was one of the richest single-prize ships in the history of maritime piracy. And by some absurd stroke of luck, when Levasseur and Taylor found her anchored off the coast of Reunion Island, she was completely defenseless. A violent storm had battered the ship during the crossing. Her main mast was snapped. 2/3 of her cannons, all 72 of them, had been thrown overboard by the crew to keep the ship from capsizing. She was sitting at anchor, crippled, waiting for repairs. Levasseur and Taylor sailed right up to her with their 2 ships. The crew of the Nossa Senhora could not fire a single shot. Most of them were actually on shore at the time making repairs, and the ones who remained on board initially mistook the pirate vessels for British trading ships. And by the time someone realized these were not merchants, by the time someone screamed "pirates" across the deck, it was far too late. Levasseur and Taylor boarded the Nossa Senhora do Cabo without firing a cannon, without a single broadside, without a single meaningful act of resistance. The capture of one of the richest ships ever to sail the Indian Ocean was less a battle and more a robbery, like walking into the world's most valuable bank vault and finding the door wide open and the guards asleep. The pirates spent days stripping the ship. The treasure was so immense that they did something almost unheard of. They did not even bother robbing the passengers personally. Why would they? There was so much gold, so many jewels, so many chests of coins that picking pockets felt like a waste of time. The Viceroy was eventually ransomed back to Portugal. The fate of the Archbishop remains a mystery to this day. And there were approximately 200 enslaved people from Mozambique also on board. What happened to them after the raid has been lost to history entirely. When the loot was divided among the crew, each individual pirate received at least 50,000 golden guineas. Each man also received 42 diamonds per person. And the larger shares, the captain's portions, went to Levasseur and Taylor. Levasseur took the fiery cross of Goa for himself. He also took the ship. He renamed her Le Victorieux and sailed her as his own pirate vessel for the next several years. Robert Louis Stevenson would later reference this exact raid in Treasure Island. The character Long John Silver mentions a ship called the Viceroy of the Indies. That is the Nossa Senhora do Cabo. Labousse's haul was so legendary that it became the inspiration for one of the most famous pirate novels ever written. And centuries later, in 2025, archaeologists from the Center for Historic Shipwreck Preservation announced that they had finally located the remains of the Nossa Senhora do Cabo on the seafloor near Nosy Boraha, a small island off the coast of Madagascar, right where the pirates had eventually scuttled her. They recovered over 3,300 artifacts: gold coins, porcelain, ivory crucifixes, an ivory plaque with gold letters spelling INRI. Religious carvings believed to have come from the cathedral in Goa. But the bulk of the treasure, the gold bars, the diamonds, the fiery cross, that was long gone. A Levasseur had taken it with him when he sailed away from Madagascar over 300 years ago. After the Nossa Senhora raid, Levasseur was the richest pirate alive, and he knew it made him a target. For a few years, he continued operating in the Indian Ocean, but the golden age of piracy was ending. European navies were cracking down. The lawless days of open piracy were being replaced by organized colonial power. Pirate havens were being raided and shut down one by one. In 1724, the French government offered an amnesty to all pirates operating in the Indian Ocean. The deal was straightforward. Give up piracy, hand over a significant portion of your stolen treasure, and you could walk free. No charges, no trial, no noose. Levasseur sent a negotiator to the governor of Bourbon Island, present-day Reunion, to discuss terms. But when the French government made their demands clear, Levasseur balked. They wanted the treasure, a large chunk of it, maybe most of it. The whole point of the amnesty, from the government's perspective, was recovering the stolen wealth. Levasseur said no. He refused to give up what he had taken, and that refusal changed his fate forever. Instead of accepting the amnesty, Levasseur disappeared. He sailed to the Seychelles, an archipelago of islands scattered across the Indian Ocean northeast of Madagascar. Remote, isolated, the kind of place where a man with enough money could vanish. And for roughly 6 years, that is exactly what he did. Levasseur lived in secret on the Seychelles, presumably enjoying the fortune he had fought and killed for. But the French government had not forgotten about him, or the treasure. In 1730, Levasseur was spotted near Fort Dauphin on the southern tip of Madagascar. He was captured by a French naval captain named de Hermite, commanding a warship called La Méduse. They took him to Saint-Denis on the island of Réunion, and then the interrogations began. According to some accounts, Levasseur was tortured for information about the treasure. Where had he hidden it? Was it on the Seychelles? Was it buried? Was it in a cave, on a ship, underwater? He refused to say a word. They gave him pen and parchment, hoping he would write down the location. Instead, Levasseur wrote something else entirely. A cryptogram. 17 lines of symbols that looked like nonsense to anyone without the key to decode them. He hid the parchment on his body underneath the long execution shirt he was forced to wear. On July 7, 1730, they brought him to the scaffold, and you already know what happened next. The piece of paper Levasseur threw into that crowd has become one of the most studied, debated, and obsessed over documents in the history of treasure hunting. The cryptogram consists of 17 lines of symbols. It uses what cryptographers call a pigpen cipher, a substitution system where each letter of the alphabet is replaced by a symbol based on a grid pattern. The shapes look like fragments of tic-tac-toe boards and X patterns. Simple in concept, but fiendishly difficult to decode without knowing the exact grid arrangement the creator used. Now here is where the story gets complicated, and honestly a little suspicious. The cryptogram was not publicly known until 1934. That is over 200 years after Levasseur died. It first appeared in a book called Le Flibustier Mystérieux by Charles de la Roncière, a well-respected French historian and librarian at the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris. La Roncière claimed to have obtained the cryptogram and managed to decrypt it. But when he published the decoded text, it did not contain a treasure map or directions to buried gold. Instead, the decrypted message appeared to be a jumbled, misspelled French text that reads more like a folk remedy, or possibly even a love spell, than a set of coordinates. And that is the first red flag. Why would a respected historian publish an entire book about a cipher whose solution reveals nothing useful? And why does no mention of Levasseur's cryptogram, his necklace, or his famous gallows speech appear in any historical documents from the actual time period? The publisher of La Roncière's book was La Masque, a company known for publishing fiction and satire. Modern historians of piracy have pointed this out as evidence that the entire cryptogram legend may have been a 20th century invention. But that has not stopped anyone from trying. The document eventually made its way to the Seychelles, where it ended up in the possession of a family named Savy on the island of Mahé. In 1923, a widow named Rose Savoy discovered a series of strange rock carvings at Belle-Ombre Beach on Mahé. Pictures of dogs, snakes, horses, turtles, and human figures carved into the stone. Further investigation turned up a map that seemed to indicate Belle-Ombre Beach had some connection to a person named Labuse. They also found the remains of a man and a woman believed to have been pirates. Their connection to Levasseur was never established, but it confirmed that pirates had once operated in the area. Then, in 1949, an Englishman named Reginald Cruz Wilkins arrived in the Seychelles. He had been living in Kenya as a former British military officer and came to the islands on vacation. He met members of the Savy family, saw the cryptogram papers and the rock carvings, and something clicked inside him. Reginald Cruz Wilkins spent the rest of his life searching for Levasseur's treasure. 27 years of digging, tunneling, blasting through granite, hiring crews, going broke, and starting again. He honeycombed the beach at Belle-Ombre with man-made tunnels that ran below sea level. He built stone walls to hold back the ocean while he excavated. He found some artifacts, coins, old firearms, a pirate sarcophagus. But not the treasure. When Reginald died, his son John took over. John Cruz Wilkins has continued the search for decades. He believes the treasure is buried beneath a stretch of road in northern Mahé, protected by massive granite slabs and possibly accessible only through a stone vault. He has funding, he has research, he has his father's lifetime of notes, but he has not found it yet. He is not the only one. An American named Robert Graff spent years excavating the same coastline after moving to the Seychelles in 1984. He negotiated an exclusive agreement with the government and spent years diving at Belle-Ombre, chiseling granite and vacuuming sand from the ocean floor 25 feet down, searching for a stone vault he believed contained the hoard. He found carvings on rocks that matched descriptions in the pirate letters, and then patterns of holes drilled into stone that seemed to mirror star constellations referenced in one of the cryptograms. Suggestive clues, tantalizing hints, but never the treasure itself. Treasure hunters have scoured Reunion Island, Madagascar, Sainte Marie, and practically every island in the western Indian Ocean. In Reunion, people have reportedly sacrificed chickens on Levasseur's grave in St. Paul, seeking spiritual guidance to the treasure's location. The grave has become a pilgrimage site for treasure seekers who travel to this volcanic island just to stand where Labuse was buried. In 2012, a French researcher named Emmanuel Mazzino claimed to have cracked the cipher and pinpointed the treasure somewhere on Reunion Island. He published a book about it in 2014, but his team could not obtain permits to dig. And according to Mazzino, the site has since been disturbed by unauthorized excavations. And then there is the pirate Le Boutin. Bernardin Najon de Lestang was a pirate who operated in the Indian Ocean in the late 1700s and was believed to have sailed with Levasseur at some point. When historians examined Lestang's possessions, they found letters referencing Levasseur's treasure, including one to his brother that read, "Our captain got injured. He made sure I was a Freemason and then entrusted me with his papers and secrets before he died. Promise your oldest son will look for the treasures." Lestang's letters also contain 2 additional cryptograms that have never been solved. So where does that leave us? The honest answer is, nobody knows if the treasure even exists anymore. There are 3 possibilities, and each one is as frustrating as the last. The first is that Levasseur did hide a massive fortune somewhere in the Indian Ocean. The cryptogram is real, and no one in nearly 300 years has been able to decode it correctly. The treasure is still sitting in a cave or buried beneath rock on some island, waiting. The second is that the treasure existed, but Levasseur spent it. He lived in hiding for 6 years on the Seychelles. Maybe the gold slowly disappeared into bribes, living expenses, and the cost of staying invisible. Maybe by the time they caught him, there was nothing left, and the cryptogram was his final joke on the world. A dead man's bluff. The third possibility is the one that historians find most likely, and treasure hunters hate the most. The cryptogram was never real. Our Charles de la Roncière made it up for his 1934 novel. There is no mention of the document in any historical source from the 1700s. The gallows speech, the necklace, the throne parchment, all of it could be romantic fiction layered on top of a real pirate's real life. But here is the thing that keeps people digging. The raid on the Nossa Senhora do Cabo absolutely happened. That is historical fact, confirmed by Portuguese and French records, corroborated by multiple independent sources, and now verified by the discovery of the actual shipwreck off Madagascar in 2025. Archaeologists pulled over 3,300 artifacts from the seafloor. Gold coins, ivory carvings, religious objects from Goa. The ship was real. The treasure was real. Levasseur really did capture it. So the question becomes, where did it all go? We know he did not hand it over to the French. We know he lived for 9 more years after the heist. We know the treasure was not found on his person or in his possession when he was captured. And we know that 300 years later, despite dozens of organized searches and the advent of modern sonar, satellite imagery, and marine archaeology, no one has produced Levasseur's fortune. Somewhere between April 1721, when Levasseur took the Nossa Senhora do Cabo, and July 1730, when the noose tightened around his neck, the richest pirate haul in history vanished. And the only clue anyone has ever had is 17 lines of symbols that may or may not be real, thrown by a dying man into a screaming crowd on a summer afternoon in 1730. The question that has tormented people for 300 years is not, was there treasure? Portuguese colonial records list the cargo. French records describe the execution. The shipwreck has been found. The treasure was real, it was taken, and it went somewhere. The real question is, did a one-eyed French pirate with an architecture degree really outsmart every government, every treasure hunter, and every cryptographer for 3 centuries? And if so, is the answer really sitting on a piece of paper that he threw into a crowd the moment before he died? Because if it is, that might be the greatest exit in the history of piracy. Maybe in the history of anything. Olivier Levasseur was born into money, educated as an architect, and could have lived a quiet, comfortable life in northern France. Instead, he spent 14 years terrorizing 2 oceans, sailed with Blackbeard and Black Sam Bellamy, pulled off the greatest heist in the golden age of piracy, and went to his grave without telling a single person where he put the loot. Nearly 3 centuries later, people are still looking, still digging, still decoding. The anime One Piece based its entire premise on this story. Gul D. Roger, the Pirate King, tells the world at his execution that he left all his treasure in one place. Find it if you can. That is Levasseur. That is Labuse, the real Pirate King. If this story kept you watching until the end, hit subscribe. I cover the wildest true stories from history every week. And if you think you can crack a 300-year-old pirate cipher, the cryptogram is still publicly available. Go ahead. Levasseur dared you to try.